It's 5 o'clock in Pirate Country, and it's time to get pumped up with the P-Man. Hit the door and hit the road. 94.3 The Game is going to get you home, and the P-Man's not holding back.
Yes! Yes! Pirates win! Pirates win!
Bring on the Patrick Johnson Show on 94.3 The Game.
Holy mackerel! Oh, my goodness!
The flagship station of the ECU Pirates.
Well, I'll just blame COVID. That's what I'll do for the demise of Oakland sports. Why not?
Hey, they have been trying to mess up Oakland sports for the last decade, way before COVID.
I mean, they had Golden State winning championships, but they went to San Francisco to play in the floating arena. Raiders bolted for Vegas, and they're doing quite well there with the stadium. And then the A's are going where? Sacramento or Fresno or somewhere next year?
Yeah, so their AAA team is in Sacramento. I think they're taking over that ballpark, but they're not even going to be called the Sacramento A's or the California A's or anything. They're just going to be the A's. Just the A's. That's what they're going to be called.
I wish they would be the Sacramento A's, and I do wish they'd stay in Sacramento.
Yeah, and then according to William, who keeps up with a lot more baseball than I do, he said they are supposed to be still 2 years from now going to Vegas. That's what he's heard, even though the Vegas mayor, I guess, kind of said don't come originally. So I don't know. I think she's kind of crazy, but who knows what it is. But
speaking of Vegas, apparently a big sports consortium out in Vegas has pulled together the money that UNLV reneged on with the NIL for the quarterback. So that's a story that is broken here overnight.
Play this week? Is that what that means?
I don't know. We'll have to see.
Who do they
We'll have to see. I don't know. They've already got a couple of so-called P5 wins or P4 wins.
They've got Fresno State. They're going to need them. Fresno's a good team.
Because that went from like a 4-point spread to a pick'em, if I'm not mistaken, in the books.
Yeah, I'll look on the legit books. Yahoo Sports has it 2.5, but their spreads are always kind of whack. Let me go to FanDuel or somebody who, gets paid to do these things.
Got you. So, wanted to say a few things about the game tomorrow. Do we have any audio up, Pilk, from the coordinators?
Yes, we have coordinator audio and 2.5 in favor of UNLV. Now, I think that may have shifted since this whole NIL thing came out. I think you're right.
This news has come right, yeah.
Who knows? But hey, Fresno's, like I said, they're a good team. This, regardless of who plays quarterback, could be a very entertaining game and have a lot of implications on the college football playoff. And that sounds crazy to say, but if UNLV drops this, that's going to be tough.
Speaking of implications on the playoff, Army is making their case to be considered very strongly in the G5 representative because they dispatched quite easily of stinky Tulane. Tulane does stink, but stinky Temple last night. And Army's I think, is it 3-0 or 4-0 for the first time in 30 years? What was the note I sent you?
4-0. They're already 3-0 in league play now.
Yeah. Amazing stuff. It really is. Let's see here. I'm looking for what you sent me yesterday regarding this. Gosh, I've gotten so many emails overnight, so many people checking in from Florida with stuff. And I really, our hearts go out to those people because it's a really sad situation down there with the hurricane, which was a Cat 4 when it struck the Big Bend region of Florida, Big Bend. Let's see here. Couple things that I think we definitely want to make sure, Pilk, that we hit, and you talked a little bit about this yesterday. This is let's hear from Blake Harrell, and he talked about the inability to get off the field on third down. Let's visit that comment.
Third down, something we took a lot of pride in. Our players and program took a lot of pride in, and started off the game, I think 3 and out a couple times. And started out really good on third down, so you felt really good about it. And then there was a streak there. They got hot, and we couldn't get off the field. Missed a few tackles, couldn't knock a ball down, and those type of things. And that was really the difference in the game to me, to be honest. I mean, those third downs and drives are so huge. Think about the one at the beginning of the fourth quarter. We got a chance to make an opportunity to make a sack back there and miss a sack, and he scrambles, gets the first down, keeps the drive alive. And all those drives led to touchdowns. I think 4 of their touchdowns came on third down. So we got to be better there. We got to be more locked in. That was a huge focus today. Was our third down period, and just put it at the end of practice. So hey, it's at the end of the game. It takes priority of our attention, our focus, playing it when we're tired, all those type of things. So we got to be much better there, and that starts with me. That starts with making sure we got the right plan, make sure we got the right mindset, the right focus of executing and getting the job done. So, and some of us, hats off to them. Their quarterback made some plays. He's certainly a good player, but at the end of the day, we got to pull the thumb. And what can we do better against UTSA this week to get back at dominating third down like we have in the past?
Blake Harrell on facing another up-tempo team, cut 10.
Yeah, UTSA certainly hurt us with some tempo last year. I think we look back at that game and our game last year, a year ago, and that was the things that hurt us was the tempo plays. We were very conscientious of that going into ODU, make sure we got lined up, got our feet in the ground, feet set, cleats in the ground, ready to play, and that's what we got to do this Saturday. Being prepared for it, and always prepared for it. They may not go tempo every snap like an ODU or like our guys. They'll slow it down, speed it up, slow it down, which in some ways is tougher because you don't know exactly when it's coming. But we always got to be prepared for it. So if we're always prepared for it, it never catches us off guard. As a play caller, I got to get the call in quick. So we got our cleats set, feet set, and we're ready to play.
That to me, Pilk, is the big thing, is very similar in offensive taste. Now, if they're running long plays against you and you're unable to get them off the field in third down, I don't think the drives would be as long. Play-wise, they might be, but time-wise, if UTSA is humming, and even if they're completing third and long situations behind the chains, it's not going to be one of these deals where it's going to be methodical cuts, death by 1,000 cuts like it seemed to be at times in the second half against Liberty. So that means you'll get the ball right back. So there's the potential for a lot of points in this game, yes, but I think the ECU offense still is quite flawed and has a ways to go before they can do the things they need to do to pile up the type of points they really would like to pile up. And it starts, according to John David Baker, with finishing drives, cut 12.
It's more kind of like, probably what Blake said. It's a little bit of a mindset. I think for our team, our players, a lot of them are not only learning how to win, they got to learn how to be able to put their foot on the gas when you got somebody down like that. Obviously the big possession where we missed the field goal, it shouldn't even come down to that. We should have put the ball in the end zone, had multiple chances, started the drive with a penalty, had a couple of busts, and then ended up having to kick a field goal and missed it. And so having opportunities in a game like that early, like I said, I think that our players, they're not only learning how to win, but they got to learn how to do that. They got to learn how to have a killer mindset, when you get a chance like that. And so it's hard. It's not easy. Winning's not easy, and it's definitely not easy, for a lot of these guys that, they're not used to being in that situation yet. And they got to learn how to do it, and they got to learn how to do it quickly.
All right. Let's see if we get time we'll get to the offensive line cut. But here's what I really wanted to say, Pilk. I think tomorrow is not only the most important game of the season. I know it's the next game. It's the first conference game. We'll get Coach speak to death on this. But for the mood of the fan base right now, for the prospects on the season, tomorrow is the most important game of 2024. And I'm going to even go as far to say tomorrow is the most important game that Mike Houston has coached as the head coach of the ECU Pirates. That's how big a victory would be tomorrow for this team, and more importantly, for this program, and most importantly, for this fan base.
Patrick, you just hit the nail on the head. And I think the reason why is if you said going into the season you were going to come out of the first 4 2-2, people would have probably been okay-ish with it. But the way you lost the last two, it's the manner. It's
the manner you've gotten to the 2-2 that I think has people really upset.
And I think even if you told them at the beginning of the season you were going to start 2-3, they would have not loved it, but they would have been okay had UTSA played like UTSA of last year. And,
sure.
And I know they got a new quarterback.
That's why we play the games.
Yeah,
why we
I know they got a new
games,
quarterback. But McCown in that bowl game last year, and that was the only college start he ever had, he looked like this kid can sling it. He looks like an NFL quarterback.
Well, he's gotten better.
Yeah, and he
He's
has gotten
better.
better, but they've had a couple rough weeks, and I think the fact they're coming in here 2-2, having that embarrassing loss at Texas State, now people are like, hey, you know what? No, UTSA is not an acceptable loss, and everything you just mentioned, and then obviously the 2-10. The big thing is the 2-10 season last year, and it's just all this piled on it. They got to win tomorrow.
The fact that, and don't get this twisted, Pirate Nation, ECU fans, loyal listeners who support ECU that are also partisans to the Patrick Johnson Show, our P1s. Thank you all for writing me yesterday. A couple of you did. The talent on this ECU roster certainly isn't that of Texas. It isn't that of Texas State. Just facts. So don't expect a dominant win. Don't expect domination. But you should have the expectation at home that you beat this edition of UTSA. And I think that's a reasonable expectation. You're going to have the weather cooperate. You're going to have a nice, good-sized crowd. Let's see how it goes tomorrow, Pilk. But I think tomorrow is the most important game, not only of the season, but of the tenure of Mike Houston. Where this season goes hinges a large part on tomorrow. Because right now, Army does not look like anything that would even approach. It'd be an upset if you beat them as the road team. Just say that. As bad, as nervous as I know a lot of Pirate fans are about next week at Charlotte, and I know they're getting some guys back and healthy, but I mean, still, it's not a good roster. So you should win that one. So, I mean, you do the math where you'd be. So tomorrow is pivotal. We'll have coverage beginning with our Anson Belt and Buckle Pirate Game Day Countdown at 1 o'clock. It is presented by Orthopedics East. Yours truly, alongside Joe Sampson, a.k.a. Joey Football. And we'll also have Dom Kasolki contributing, and, of course, Philip the Ref Pilkington will be there as well. All right, we've got a great show for you today. They'll be honoring the 99 team tomorrow. We'll talk to Coach Steve Logan later in the program. And coming up, Brett Friedlander, our old friend. Another big matchup in the state tomorrow. The Battle of the Blues. Undefeated Duke taking on the University North of Carrboro and the Cadillac man himself, Mac Brown. We'll preview that. We'll talk some other goings-on in the ACC and college football with our dear friend Brett Friedlander from Saturdays Down South. And don't forget, you can listen to the Duke game tomorrow on our sister station, Talk 103.7 WTIB, beginning at 3 with pregame coverage, and on Oldies 94.1 and 102.7 for the UNC feed, also beginning at 3. It is the Patrick Johnson Show that gets you to the weekend edition, and we go on with Friedlander next.
Have you noticed he's in his own little happy hour? We're back to the Patrick Johnson Show on 94.3 The Game.
This is the happy hour program.
Here's the P-Man.
All right, welcome back. So I was... Brett Friedlander joins us here, and we're going to have Steve Logan on in a few minutes, talk with Coach about the 99 season and Hurricane Floyd. Brett was down in Fayetteville. Now Brett is with Saturdays Down South. But Brett was a huge radio star in Fayetteville then, and also writing for the Fayetteville Observer, which probably one of the most underrated sports departments in North Carolina historically, because they've had a lot of attention went to the N&O, and rightfully so back in the day, but there were a lot of good writers rolling out there in Fayetteville.
It was incredible the staff we had. Yeah, it was incredible the staff we had. We had Sammy Batten, Thomas Pope, Earl Vaughn, Mike Graff, it's and myself. It was an all-star team, and it's just a shame that that kind of thing doesn't happen anymore. I mean, local sports is not a priority for newspapers anymore. It's a shame. I mean, the same thing down there in Greenville. I mean, you've had some really great people come in there, Nathan Summers in particular, but it's just not the same. It's not like it used to be.
And the late great Woody Peel. Who a couple weeks ago we lost. And then Wilmington used to have a hell of a lineup. There were some really good sports sections in the state. All right,
I was part of that one too.
That. You were, yes, you were. We're talking about 99 Floyd. So you were down there. You were at the game. We're going to talk to Coach about this, but you were at the game when the Miami Hurricanes came to Carter Finley, and the Pirates took the bus trip up from Columbia, and I think everybody in eastern North Carolina went to Carter Finley that night because basically they had nowhere else to go, and they were sick of being in eastern North Carolina surrounded by floodwaters. So they got canoes and they paddled their way. It was the precursor to OBX, where you would take the ferry from OBX to Chapel Hill. That's kind of what the people in the East did in Floyd back in the 90s. But you were at the game. What do you remember about the game, Mr. Friedlander?
The thing I remember about the game most is that the Pirates won, and even NC State fans were rooting for them. And after the game, East Carolina's students that were there stormed the field, tore down the goalpost, and brought it back with them to Greenville. That was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And, of course, it cost them a bunch of money because they had to replace it. NC State wasn't real happy about that because they let them use their stadium. But there's that. And, it's interesting because Hurricanes and ECU kind of seem to go together, because I also remember – I don't remember which Hurricane it was, but Virginia Tech was supposed to come down for a game.
Yeah.
And
they were
they
going up to Virginia Tech.
That's
they were going up to Virginia Tech. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a big to-do about that, and I think karma has hit Virginia Tech since. But
good. Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Brett. I'm tired of saying it. I'm glad somebody else said it for once, that karma has hit Virginia Tech for the way they pouted about that. And then during that whole thing, either in that season or around that season, there was another hurricane that East Carolina beat USF, Scotty Montgomery.
Yes.
If they didn't beat them, they played really well. But anyway, they couldn't fly back to Raleigh or Greenville. They had to fly to like Emporia or Richmond, and got stuck at like the Roanoke Rapids Dewdrop Inn for the night. I mean, just a nightmare.
Well, Roanoke Rapids has a good concert hall, so maybe they
Randy Parton's old theater, and you talk about stories from back in the day. There's some Randy Parton stories there. So I don't know.
I've got some Steve Logan ones that he probably doesn't want. So yeah,
well, we'll get to Coach Logan in a little bit. All right, to the here and now. Saturdays Down South. They have merged with Saturday Road, and they've rolled it all under that banner. And Brett Friedlander continues to write for him, and is emerged as one of our favorites here on the Patrick Johnson Show. We always appreciate his time. Let's talk about the big game in the state tomorrow from the statewide perspective, and it is 4-0 Duke hosting a UNC team that comes in quite flawed, quite wounded after JMU hung 70 on him in Kenan Stadium.
Yeah, it's the second time anybody's hung a 70 burger on the Tar Heels, and I think you probably remember the first one, right?
Yes,
2014,
very well,
Shane
10 years ago.
Yeah. But anyway, it was a bad loss in a lot of different ways, and the aftermath was even worse for Carolina because the word began to leak out that Mac Brown may have told his players that he was ready to walk away. He has walked that back since, but it's still the whole mess was a sign that Mac is really, I think, about done. He's seen enough. He doesn't need to be doing this. He's 73. He's got a championship ring. He's cleaned up the mess that Larry Fedora left. So it'll be interesting to see how Carolina bounces back, because I'm not sure you bounce back from that, especially the way it happened. I mean, it's not just like they got beat. They beat themselves. They gave up a blocked punt for a touchdown. They gave up a pick six. They let the other team recover an onside kick. It was a mess. And they're playing a Duke team that has gotten better with every game. Their defense has been good, throughout. And Manny Diaz is a defensive guy. You would expect that. But their offense is really starting to kind of figure it out. And Malik Murphy's starting to build a chemistry with those guys. And I think that this is really a game of two ships heading in opposite directions, and the direction that the Tar Heels are going is not the one you want to be going in.
Manny Diaz has never faced Mac Brown, and they worked together.
Yep.
Diaz was, I think it was BYU was the loss, and they'd given up 40 points or something. And basically, Mac needed a scapegoat, so he scapegoated Manny and fired him. And that came, I don't know what season that was back in the, well, obviously Mac was at Texas. So interesting that they'll meet for the first time since then. And it's really interesting, too, to me. We knew Manny Diaz is a heck of a defensive coach. I did like this hire for Duke in the aftermath of the messy thing with Elko and his departure and all of that and how he handled it. I think Duke made a serious football hire because they had hired somebody who had had success in the ACC as a head coach and was a proven defensive coordinator at some big places, Penn State, Texas, other stops along the way. And the defense has been really, really good, if not great at times. Again, you got to consider the schedule, but still. And the offense, as you say, is coming along. So, I mean, I just, it seems like there's a pretty good vibe around this Duke program right now with Diaz.
Yeah, there is. And, the other thing about Manny Diaz, first of all, he got fired at Miami, but he had a winning record when he got fired. They basically got rid of him because they wanted Mario Cristobal, who was an alumnus. So it's not like he failed at Miami. The other thing, too, is I think at his age, in his situation, having, been a head coach and now being, getting a second chance, I don't necessarily think he's looking at this as a stepping stone. I think that he's a guy who could stay there for the duration, kind of sort of the way David Cutcliffe did. And, Cutcliffe stayed a little bit too long. But I see this as a hire that might be a long-term hire. And I really do like, what I've seen from Duke and from Manny. And the other thing, too, is the commitment that the school has shown in the program. Yeah. They've made improvements to Wallace Wade Stadium, and they're showing that it's not just a basketball school.
And I'm getting text. I'm mistaken on this. Diaz faced Mac in 21 when he was coaching Miami, and the Tar Heels beat him 45-42. So Mac Brown defenses allowing tons of points even then when they could score tons of points. So that's one reason why it helped. No, I think Manny Diaz has done a fantastic job and has brought a lot of enthusiasm. It's going to be interesting to see because this is, admittedly, I think a little bit of a step up in competition for the Blue Devils this week, at least, as far as the quality depth of the roster. It's an ACC roster, clearly. So with the Tar Heels, Mr. Brett Friedlander from Saturdays Down South with us here on the Patrick Johnson Show. Mac, a couple things at play here. Mac's a little bit of a drama queen, let's face it. And then, yes, he does not like losing to Duke. And so I almost wonder, was this sort of calculated that he put out there, I'm going to retire, all shucks, and just to fire the guys up for Duke after they got 70 hung on him at home?
Maybe. I mean, he's 5-0 against Duke since he came back. He has not lost to Duke since the infamous 41-0 game in which Steve Spurrier took the team picture in front of the scoreboard. What was that, 1990-something? 1989, yeah. So, I mean, that's how long it's been since he's lost to Duke. So maybe it is. But, there's another, possible conspiracy theory there in that maybe Bubba Cunningham or somebody within the program leaked the whole drama behind the closed doors of the locker room to try to facilitate Mac's departure. So I don't know. We'll see Saturday. That's what makes this, even more intriguing than the fact that they're playing for the victory bell. And it's a big deal to the players. It's a big deal to the fans.
Who do you like and why, Brett?
I like Duke because I think their defense is good enough to limit Omarion Hampton, and whoever ends up playing quarterback for UNC is going to end up being self-destructive. And I think that Duke's offense is good enough against that defense in particular to put enough points on the board. The thing is, Duke the last 2 years has lost to Carolina, but 2 years ago it took a miracle drive. I think it was like an 80-yard drive in the last minute and a half by Drake May. And then last year it came in double overtime in Chapel Hill. So it's not like Carolina has dominated them. And I think that the talent level has now shifted a little bit, and I think it's pretty much even now. But I think the difference is the defense and Malik Murphy, and I think Duke wins this game, especially since it's in Durham.
And last year, let's face it, the Heels were the beneficiary of a couple of calls late in the game as well at home against Duke. All right, Brett Friedlander with us. Wolfpack play at noon tomorrow. Death taxes and NC State noon game. Those are the things you can kind of count on in the world. But they've got tomorrow. What sister of the poor do they have tomorrow? Northern Illinois, where
who
Dave
beat
Doran
Notre Dame and was ranked 2 weeks ago.
That's true. That's true. Yes, that is true. But they're playing an NC State team that seems like they're on their either second or third reset just this season, and their fifth "we got to get it together" game.
Yeah. It's also Dave Doran's former coaching stop. So he coached the Huskies to the Orange Bowl before coming to Raleigh. But here's the thing. It's not Tennessee and it's not Clemson. And NC State is going to win 8 or 9 games because that's what they do. And they're going to lose to teams like Clemson and Tennessee. So, they've got a lot to clean up, especially defensively. But I liked what I saw from C.J. Bailey. And they seem to kind of get a little confidence going in their running game late in the game against Clemson, even though it was against their walk-ons. But if they can kind of patch some holes defensively, especially against a team like this, they're going to be fine because that's just what they do. It's going to be one of those years where as long as Doran beats Carolina at the end of the season and wins 8 games or 9 games, everybody will say,
everybody will be happy.
That's what we do, so.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean it's still real early,
and they'll still think they're dark horse playoff contenders going into 2025. So
that's what they do.
Go. That's what they do. And look, I think Wake's got an important game tomorrow against Lafayette. And that's kind of if they want to get anywhere near a bowl, that tomorrow's a must win. And they've had some heartbreaking losses. So. Yeah,
they gave away a real opportunity against Virginia. Yeah. That game is going to come back and haunt them because they don't have a whole lot of opportunities to get 6. And Louisiana is one that they absolutely have to have. I mean, the way I figured it, they had maybe 7 chances to get 6 wins. I mean, because you're going to throw out the Ole Misses and the Notre Dames. And, so you got to take advantage of your opportunities. And this is one that they have to have. And, I believe it's next week they come here to Raleigh to play. That's one they really kind of could possibly steal. But that's,
right.
Those are the kind of games they have to win.
Wake always plays Tobacco Road tough. They always do. All right. Let us take a timeout. Brett, thank you. Great to see you again. And hope all is well. Check out Brett at SaturdaysDownSouth.com covering the ACC. Pilk will have an update when we come back here on the Patrick Johnson Show. And then we will get Coach Steve Logan joining us here. Stay tuned to the Get You to the Weekend edition of the PJ Show on 94.3 The Game, and the IBX Media app continues right after this.
We have you covered with all the ECU news and beyond that you need for the drive home. The Patrick Johnson Show on 94.3 The Game.
It's apropos this week that they're honoring the ECU team from 1999. The head coach of the Pirates then was Steve Logan. He's the host of the Steve Logan Show, 5 o'clock every Thursday here on 94.3 The Game and our sister station, 96.3 as well. Coach, always nice to have a few minutes with you. I really appreciate it. First thing that pops in your mind when you think back to 1999?
Well, it was just the moment-to-moment decisions that had to be made to navigate through an uncharted event. We left Greenville to go play South Carolina, and that was kind of the beginning of it because we had to have the highway patrol in front of the bus, and there was a helicopter above the highway patrol that had to navigate us out of town on roads that weren't flooded. And so the trip down there was really long. And, normally that's probably a 5.5 hour bus deal, but it was much longer than that. That was just the beginning. But thank goodness we went down and we played really well against South Carolina. And that was really my focus there. And then, of course, after the game, guess what? You're not going home, and you're in the hotel, and figure it out. And, the first hurdle was when I contacted South Carolina, and they told us under no circumstances could we have access to their practice facilities. I was willing to practice, morning, midnight. It didn't matter.
Right.
Just whenever they weren't using it, could we use it? And the answer was no, which, I've never understood that. Never, ever, ever. And, but we didn't blink, and I found a high school, and it was not ideal. I can tell you that much. It was not ideal. We kind of had a muddy little patch of grass, and we did not practice all week. We only had walkthroughs because our equipment. I mean, just the laundry, underwear, toothbrushes, all the things that the kids didn't pack for this, and I certainly didn't either.
Right.
So it was just moment to moment and get through today, and let's have this walkthrough. And after the walkthrough, what are we going to do? Well, we got to have some sort of a weight workout, and we found a Lifetime Fitness type place, and we would bust the kids over and get a lift. And then, just feeding the team it was monumental all day long, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But we got all that done, and now it's time to, you make it through the week, and it's get on the bus, and here we go. And I think I mentioned this, maybe someone asked me, but Doug Martin, my offensive coordinator, we were busing into Raleigh, when we finally got on the bus and headed to Raleigh to play this game. I told Doug we were about 45 minutes out of Raleigh, and I said, Doug, there is not going to be one person at this game. This is going to be like a Saturday morning scrimmage in preseason. And he goes, I know. We were kind of in agreement. I mean, how do you even just suddenly have a football game? And we got closer and closer, and suddenly it looked like the North Carolina State Fair was getting ready to happen. And I do remember those two events, of being convinced nobody would be there, and rolling into the stadium area and seeing that it was just an absolute, electric bowl game type atmosphere. And, we went out and we began the game about like I thought we'd begin the game, wondering what time it was. And, it was really disconnected and disconcerting. And, you look up and you're down 20-1 to nothing or whatever it was. We were down a whole bunch to not very much. I remember that. And but I do remember, again, I just have little snapshots in my mind. I remember Kevin Miller hit a field goal right before halftime that mattered on several levels. It mattered from the standpoint of we were finally getting the game to slow down a little bit, because their football team was just packed with NFL football players. And we had a good team too. But the game was beginning to slow down a little bit, and Kevin put a field goal on the board. And, it really kind of flipped a switch for us. And we came out in the second half and played well, won the game. And then the next thing I remember is getting on the bus to go to Greenville and telling Doug Martin again, Doug, we got to play Army in 6.5 days, and we're going to get beat 10,000 to nothing. And I was convinced of that because, again, just managing all of that, the highs, the lows, the emotions. And, of course, when we got back to Greenville, we didn't practice all week. We just had walkthroughs because the kids all had to go stand in FEMA lines. The FEMA people came in to navigate all of the insanity. And, of course, our kids, most of the football team lost everything. They lived in the tar landing apartments. And, of course, the Tar River overflowed, and it flooded every one of those kids' apartments out. And, we had to find new apartments. The hero behind the scenes was my secretary, Joyce Stroud. She's passed away, sadly. But Joyce went back and went across town, and there was a new apartment complex going up somewhere, and she secured apartments for all those kids, and towels and silverware, underwear, socks, shoes. It was just ridiculous. And but she got it done, and we slowly oozed our way back into some sort of a routine. But it was a mess from the beginning to the end. It was a mess.
We're talking to ECU Hall of Fame coach Steve Logan here with us. So was there a moment after the South Carolina game, at what point do you find out, all right, we're not going back because we can't get back? Or did you know
it
that
was
before?
after No, it was after my press conference. I came out, and everybody's out there eating those little post-game, buckets of chicken or pizza or whatever we gave them that night. And it's time to get on the bus, and I was informed, hey, we can't go back. Well, at that point, you turn right around and go right back to the hotel that you had just checked out of. And we checked back into that, and again, that began the process of, hey, what are we going to have for breakfast? And, hey, send somebody down to Walmart and buy all the underwear, socks, and T-shirts that you can get your hands on, and start distributing those out. Because all the players, they just rode down there in a sweatsuit. I never had our football team dress up in coat and ties and all that other stuff that other programs do. I wanted my players comfortable. So we dressed up in our sweats, and we had our tennis shoes on, and that's how it was a 5.5 hour bus ride, for crying out loud. So that's really all they had. And so we had to re-equip everybody on the run, and it was daily, moment to moment, with a lot of people hustling around, adjusting, in-flight adjustments, I call it.
When the game is going on, you're trailing going into the fourth. Is there a particular moment? You said the Miller field goal, but is there a particular moment where you felt like the game really turned?
Well, we hit upon some misdirection run game. Jamie Wilson, I believe, was our running back then. And we had a misdirection, what I call a backdoor draw. And Doug called that play, and it hit for about a 25-yard touchdown. And then we began to move David Garrard in the pocket a little bit off of that, and then came back to that play again. And I think Jamie may have scored 2 touchdowns off of that one football play. And it was just real good play calling on Doug's part. And it was intuitive, to find that, because, Miami's football team's so fast. And we got them to overcommit one way and came back behind them. And, I just remember that being a real eye-opener, when we hit on that football play, that we thought we could come back to it, and we did. And it mattered. And then, of course, the last drive, when we had the football, we called a timeout. And David and I were talking on the sideline. I said, Dave, we're going to find out. You've proven that you can play with anybody. And we're going to find out now if you can beat anybody. I remember saying that to David. And he went out there and beat him. And, like I say, those are just snapshots that linger about those moments. Yeah. And then the next thing I know, the last snapshot I have of is little Forrest Foster, our field corner. You would know the name of the wide receiver from Miami, ran a deep corner poster out type deal on close to the last play of the game. And Forrest was with him step for step. He was a 13-year NFL football player. I remember the kid playing forever in the NFL, but Forrest covered him. And that pass was incomplete, and it was game, set, match. That's kind of the last thing I remember about that game.
There's so many kids on the roster then from Eastern North Carolina and from North Carolina. In addition to their own issues of housing, were there any players that you can recall that had a particularly, bad situation with their family in the aftermath of that? Because obviously it just wasn't Greenville. It was pretty much all of Eastern North Carolina was underwater.
That part of it I just couldn't shoulder at that time, and I don't recall any of that. I really don't. I just couldn't. Normally I would go and get involved in something like that if it was one of my players, but it was just too much. I don't remember anybody, having that particular problem. But we did have a bunch of North Carolina football players. I remember that. But, everybody eventually got, we resettled the entire football team practically. And, that's all we could do. That's all we could do.
When you get honored with the ESPY, how did all that come about? How did you find out about that, and what was that experience like?
I didn't even really know anything about that, and I didn't appreciate what it was at the time. I just, hey, you guys won the ESPY award, and I'm not wired into that kind of stuff. I'm trying to coach football, and I just remember Jeff Carr, myself, maybe Kevin Monroe went with us. I can't remember, but they flew us somewhere. I couldn't even tell you where, to a studio, and they awarded us with that. And it was a great honor, and it was an honor for the kids. It was for the players, and vicariously, obviously, East Carolina University. But it was all about the players, and I made sure and tell everybody it was the players, the players, the players. And again, I say this about coaching quarterbacks or whatever, people try to give you credit. Any credit to me was simply I didn't screw it up. And that's how I feel about it.
Coach, thanks for talking to us about this. I really appreciate it, and enjoy Saturday and the fact you'll get to reunite and get to see some of your former players from that team.
I'm looking forward to seeing them. Thanks.
Little symmetry for you here, thanks to Coach Logan and Brett Friedlander, by the way. They drew almost 47,000 in Oakland yesterday for the last game, by the way, Pilk.
Yeah, did you get to watch any of it?
No, I was working yesterday.
Oh, yeah. I luckily
was braving traffic in downtown Raleigh in the rain, and then did the game last night carrying Apex for my final Friday Night Rivals broadcast of the year, as I'll be on the volleyball beat and more ESPN Plus beats next week. We'll have some news on that. All right. Well, you watched it? Go ahead, Pilk.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get to watch the whole thing. Obviously, I was doing Logan's show, but I did get to watch while I was waiting for Coach to sign on. Got to do the watch the very beginning when they did the tribute and had all the announcers there talking and looking back some of the memories, which was cool. And then actually during Logan's show, he had just taken a caller and they were chit-chatting, and I was able to flip it up and watch the last kind of few outs and watch the tears of everybody. So intern Brandon and I were able to watch that. So it was kind of cool. It was sad, but I was glad I got to see it.
Hey, good to talk to you there, Mr. Philip the Ref Pilkington, and thanks for your help. We'll be back tomorrow on 94.3 The Game, and we'll have Pirate Game Day Countdown for Anson, Belton, Buckle, and for our friends at Orthopedics East, myself, Joe Sampson, and Pilk. Big game for the Pirates tomorrow. We'll have coverage beginning at 1. Talk to you then. Have a great rest of your evening, and have a safe weekend.